I'm Matt Downing, and welcome to Diving Deep EDU.
Curious conversations with all types of peeps. Encouraging innovation, we are diving deep. Certainly education is what we like to speak. Fervent with dedication, now it is time to teach. Yeah.
Welcome to Diving Deep EDU. We are back at it with a focus for the next chunk of episodes. We're going to be talking about change. Not just change in a general sense, but bringing about change within an educational setting, within a school. And we're going to be doing that as we look at organizational behavior. We look at different books and articles about the philosophies of change. See, many of these books and papers that I've read are talking about change, but they're not written directly to educators. They don't have the educational context in mind. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking these articles, these books, these philosophies, and we're going to be seeking how do we apply them to the K-12 education setting. We're going to be reflecting, right? We're going to be considering, and ultimately, we're going to be seeking to apply. Now, if you have questions or comments, if you have specific questions, send me an email because we're going to be featuring some of these questions in the future. And you can find my email in the show notes. And while you're at it, go ahead, leave a review and share this episode out. Let's get rolling. So today's episode is going to be considering management versus leadership, right? We're not going to pin one against the other, though. We're not going to try to find out which one is superior than the other. We're not trying to say management's better than leadership or leadership is better than management. We're interested in a more nuanced discussion. We want to see the value of both, the value of management when we want to bring about change and the value of leadership when we want to bring about change. But I do want to first make a distinction that they're different, right? That management is not leadership, that leadership is not management. Many times we've seen, management and leadership conflated, right? Sort of like, oh, he's managing well or he's leading well. And really when we say he's leading well, we mean he's managing well. When we say he's managing well, we mean he's leading well. And I think as we do that, we're doing a disservice. We're doing a disservice to management and leadership, and we're also preventing the change process from really flourishing. So our goal today is to consider both, to look at both, and to see how they're unique, how they're different, and maybe which one of those areas we're not utilizing as we're seeking to bring about change within our context. Well, I'm not trying to say, and I will not say, that leadership is better than management, or vice versa. I do want to say this. You can't manage your way into change, right? You need direct leadership. You can't manage your way into change processes. You need leadership for that to occur. And I do think this is lacking within education. Right? I do think this is lacking the leadership component. It's not because I think that educators are bad leaders or leaders within the educational context don't know what they're doing. It's not that at all, right? I think that education, the context of education is more conducive to managing instead of leading. Again, it's not to say there aren't great leaders. It's just the environment is more conducive to managing a system than leading a system. Right? Schools are hotbeds for managing. Think about it. Think about the day of a vice principal or the day of a principal. Let's think through that real quick, right? You have a parent phone call. Okay, you manage that. Student disruption. You go to the classroom. You manage that. A teacher has a question. You manage that. Field trip approval. You manage that. You're not leading that. You're managing that. The bus is running late. What do? You manage it. You have to attend an IEP meeting. You're not leading that meeting, you're attending it, right? You're managing that. You're making sure everything is done well. Oh, there's an issue on the recess. You have to cover the recess. Some people are absent. You're covering it. You're managing it, right? We could have hundreds of examples. There are examples of leadership. I'm not saying there aren't. But what I'm saying is the context is more conducive to managing as opposed to leading. So we have to have our eye on in what ways are we over-relying on management and we're not leading to bring about change. But let me bring it back to a point I made earlier. While management is imperative within schools, we need to manage. I'm not saying we don't. We need to manage. Change within a school will not occur without leadership. Let me say that again. Change within schools will not occur without leadership. Coming back to the point I made earlier, you can't manage your way into change. If you want to change, you need to lead, right? You need to lead into that change. You can't just manage it. You do have to manage as a leader, right? Or delegate and have other people manage. That does happen. But if you want a change to occur, there needs to be leadership. Let's look at a couple articles, right? We're going to look at 2 articles, and I think these will help bring helpful distinctions to our conversation. So the first is a short article in the Harvard Business Review, and it's titled this, 3 Differences, Managers and Leaders. And I like this article because it's concise and it offers helpful guidance. And it says really there's 3 differences, but I don't know. I saw a 4th in here, so I guess we're going to hit up 4 key differences between managers and leaders. So let's think about this, and I think this is going to help us. All right, the first difference between managers and leaders. Managers count value, and leaders create value. All right, the second difference, managers have circles of power, leaders have circles of influence. And the third difference, managers manage work, and leaders lead people. And I'll hold off on the 4th sort of distinction as the close of this article. All right, so let's think about this, right? And it's essential, right, to have managers at work because you need to count the value, right? You need to count what's going on. You need to know what is happening. Maybe you need to account for the data in your building. You have to do that. Right? You have to see where your data's at. You have to see what's happening. You have to see what's going on in your building. But a leader is going to create that value. The leader is going to create those data sets, right? They're not just counting. They're not just organizing. They're creating a value in that school that wouldn't be there without that leader. All right, think of the second one, right? Many times managers rely on their job title, right? On their power, on their bureaucratic hierarchy of where they're standing. I'm higher than you on the organizational chart, so you need to listen to me. And that is important. It's important to have a hierarchy chart. It's important to know sort of who's in charge, but they rely on that. Leaders create circles of influence that they can bring about change within their environment. They're not relying on their title. They're not sort of relying on the organizational chart. Everyone take a look at this to know who to report to. No, they're creating their influence by the way that they're leading. And that third example, managers manage work, right? You need that. But if you're a leader, you're leading people. You're not just managing how they're doing things. You're leading the whole person in order to achieve greater value. And I would say the 4th distinction that I really liked is this. Managers have subordinates, right? That gets back to that circles of power idea. And leaders have followers. So within the school environment, right? Are people following you? Are they being influenced? Are they benefiting from the value that you're bringing? Or are they just your subordinates? Are they just doing this work because of the power structure? Are they just doing this work because they're being managed? Are they just doing this work because they have to? There's a big distinction between the two. And while we need managers, change will not come about through management. Change will not come about through counting the value. Change will not come about through creating circles of power. Change will not come about by just managing the work. Change will not come about by focusing on who are my subordinates. It won't happen. We need to lead. Let's take a look at one more article to help expand our understanding. And this article takes a little bit of a different stance, which I appreciate. So the article is the difference between change management versus change leadership. And this article is good, right? Even the title, it's calling change management, right? You need management to bring about change and change leadership as well. So I like the way it's bringing those two together. And this article offers a helpful perspective and shows the importance of both change management and change leadership. Because already in our conversation today on this episode, I can feel me slanting, more towards, we got to lead. And we do. But this article helps show that you also need that management piece, because I can see me going a little bit too far to that piece and forgetting about the necessity of management within the change process. All right, so this article basically, and this will be brief on this article, basically it highlights change management, right? Focuses on the people side of change. It's primarily concerned with the processes, right? How we do things, the tools that we use, the techniques, and it supports individuals, right? Change leadership, though, emphasizes setting a vision, right? If you're casting a vision, you are leading, right? If you're inspiring, you're leading. If you're influencing people, then you're leading, influencing them. They're not just doing it because you told them to, but through your influence, right? They're embracing it. Successful change leaders drive transformation. They motivate, right? And they lead change by shaping culture, right? Guiding people. Again, these are different, and both are needed within an educational setting. But from my perspective, right, as I've said over and over again, the change leadership is a little bit more lacking, right, within education. Change management is more about the processes. Change leadership is the vision. So let me give you another example. I'm doing a teacher observation, right? There's lots of tools. There's lots of processes. There's lots of steps, right? We both fill out paperwork, right? We have a pre-meeting. I observe. We have a post-meeting. I do another learning walk. We both submit these artifacts, right? We got to do these processes. There's tons of them. The processes are so confusing. I sort of created this direction sheet for people I work with because it's confusing, all of the different things that you have to do, right? And if I do all of those things, if the teacher does all of those things and I manage them well, it's complete. I'm done the observation. The teacher's done their part. Everything is successful. The teacher's proficient. Great job. Let's move on. Did I manage that situation or did I lead? Right? I managed. Now, if I wanted to lead that situation, I'd be casting a vision for that teacher to influence their instructional practices. I would be influencing them, not because I'm doing their observation, not because I'm higher on the hierarchy org chart. It's because I'm influencing them, right? I'm motivating them. I'm casting a vision for, wow, if you try this strategy, I think it could really transform your classroom. You are doing amazing. But this strategy, I think, hits a little piece that you're not utilizing. If you do this, I think you're going to have tremendous results. Do you want me to come in and show you? Or do you want me, I send a video about how it's done or we talk about it, and the teacher does that strategy not because they had to, but because they were influenced by a certain leadership and then they found success, right? Motivated to keep that change going. And that's what we want within education, right? We don't want to just manage and check boxes and keep the thing moving. Right? Where's the excitement of that? Where's the change that's going to happen as a result of that? No, we want to lead. We want to lead. We want to cast a vision. We want to inspire. We want to motivate. We want to influence. Not based on our rank, right? Not based on our power structure, but based on the vision and getting people on board. All right, so this is all great, right? We got 2 articles we just considered. We have some concepts we've been thinking about. So how are we going to apply this? How are we going to take this into our context? Well, I'm going to ask you this one question, and I'm going to give you a couple of specifics. I want you to think about, I want you to reflect. Are you leading change or are you managing change? You might disagree with this next statement, but I want you to consider it. You can't manage your way into change. I want you to consider that. And I want to see where you are on that spectrum of management versus leadership. Then I want you to do this. I want you to take some time at the beginning of your next week. I want you to refer to those 4 distinctions that we talked about earlier, and I'll highlight them quickly in a moment. I want you to write these down, and I want you to make a plan for how you are going to lead this coming week as opposed to management. And I want you to look at those distinctions, every day. And then on Friday, I want you to go back to those distinctions. I want you to consider, in what ways did I lead? And then think about it for the following week and do that again, right? A simple protocol at the beginning of the week. Make a plan for how you're going to lead as opposed to just manage. Reference those distinctions throughout the week and return to them on Friday and see, how did I do the work that I wanted to do? And it's not going to be easy, but change is not easy. That's why all schools aren't able to experience successful change. So here's the distinctions I want you to think about. Creating value versus counting value. Circles of influence versus circles of power. Leading people versus managing work. And then leaders have followers, managers have subordinates. So consider those ideas. Consider the stuff we've been talking about. Are you managing or are you leading? All right, well, let's end with that thought, right? Let's end with that specific thought as we consider management is not leadership when bringing about change. Thank you so much for tuning into Diving Deep EDU. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Questions, send an email, subscribe, share, leave a review. Until next time.
Wow, it's time to reflect. That's astounding. You've been checking out the podcast from Matthew Downing. Hope you like diving deep like a scuba diver. And the show provoked hope, that's our true desire.